So for this particular Morose poll, the plan was to shackle purple and yellow, have a rogue kite X, and then I would be kiting Skull. The feral main tank and the pally-off tank drag Morose over to the other end of the room. The pally-off tank throws a stun out on Skull to buy us a couple of extra seconds. The rogue's using a combination of crippling poisons, stuns, gouges, just to keep X occupied and continue to kite him. The key here is just to burn down Skull as fast as possible, and typically the priests are the first ones you're dealing with, so also making sure that you're interrupting their greater heals or their mana burn if it's a Shadow Priest. The mana burn in particular is completely lethal and something to make sure that you interrupt. Once Skull is dead, you can move on to X. Priests are continuing to reshackle their targets every couple of casts. Now here you'll see me get Garroted, so I will Ice Block. One of the only real ways to get rid of Garrode is Ice Block. The other few ways are Dwarven Stone Form, and Pallies can get rid of it on themselves with Divine Blessing or others with Blessing of Protection. So we eliminate X. At this point, the fight gets a lot simpler. And in fact, as each of the individual adds dies, the fight gets progressively much simpler for the rest of the raid. Now we've got 2 adds still under shackle. We opt to go straight after Morose and continue the fight there. It's actually recommended that if you've got shackles as CC in particular, that you keep those shackles up as long as possible. The quicker you get on Morose, the better. And even though you have to shackle once every few casts, that's far preferable to wasting the time and energy of burning through those additional adds versus just getting on Morose and killing him quickly. Morose is relatively tank and spank. You have to deal with the Garrotes, and then you also have to deal with the blinds and the gouges that he'll throw out, which is one of the reasons you need 2 tanks. He will occasionally gouge the main tank. It's a frontal attack, works just like Rogue Gouge. It's a multi-second stun, essentially. And then you will also have to deal with blinds on the off tank, anyone who's lower on the threat list. The blinds are a poison and can be dispelled just like any other poison by a pally, a shaman, a druid, etc. One of the things the main tank has to watch for is that when the off tank gets blinded, it's really imperative that the main tank turns their back to Morose to avoid getting gouged. At least as long as the blind is still up. The moment it's dispelled, the main tank can turn around and continue building threat. It's never really a threat issue because typically the main tank's been on the target for much longer than the rest of the raid has because they've been dealing with the adds. If the main tank doesn't do that, you see what happens right here. Morose runs the next person on the threat list because both the main tank and the off tank have been incapacitated by the blind and the gouge. Now typically you can go through one of these fights without never happening just because the timing of gouge and blind never sync up. But it's really important that your main tank plans for the worst case scenario and make sure that they don't leave Morose the opportunity to run rampant through the raid. Very similar to why the priests need to continue to cast shackle every couple of casts, even though it might not necessarily be needed. If one of those shackles gets free and kills one of those shacklers, the raid's then stuck having to kill that shackle, and they're now down either a healer or a DPSer. Now once Morose is dead, you can kill the rest of the adds if you want, or one of the easier ways to deal with ending this event is to simply run them out of the room and have them reset. Once Morose is dead, the entire event won't reset when you pull the adds out, but the adds themselves will. One of the reasons that we don't tend to advocate using fear effects is precisely because of the mechanic you're about to see. If you happen to get an errant fear that pushes one of these adds out of the room before you've killed Morose, it'll reset the entire event, and that can often just be incredibly discouraging and take too much time. So, keeping your head cool, focusing on the adds, burning them down as fast as possible, and then making sure your tanks are doing the right thing leads to an easy win.